Hello and welcome back to The World is a Dangerous Place, this time to bring you the Banner Saga. The Banner Saga was released in January 2014 to mobile phones and computers, with PlayStation and Xbox releases in 2016, and finally to the Switch in 2018. The Banner Saga incidentally is a trilogy, but for this video we'll only delve into the first part, which covers chapters 1 through 7. The game was developed by Stoic Studios and Versus Evil, and takes place in a fictional unnamed world. In this world, a pantheon of gods has fallen for unknown reasons, and left the region to humans and giants, known as Varl. The two have a tenuous relationship and allied themselves to stave off a group of humanoids known as the Dredge. Throughout history, the Dredge have been repelled twice in large-scale wars in the region. After the last war, the Varl leadership has mostly taken charge, likely because of their longevity, with the Varl really only dying from combat. The world has also changed since the gods have died, as the sun no longer sets and is frozen in the sky, though it's never explained why in this game. The game follows two different caravans who eventually merge, one led by a Varl named Haken, and the other by Rook, a human. We begin the story, however, with a group of Varl led by Ubin. He's a tax collector, as well as a historian. He's one of the oldest Varl, likely one of the oldest 3 in the world. The caravan makes their way through the town of Strand, collecting tithes on their way back home to Grofheim. Upon entering the town, the caravan learns of usurpers attacking the governor, and the group makes their way to the Great Hall. It's a group of humans that are from a rival clan, but are outnumbered before we even join, and don't have much fighting prowess. Once the mutiny has been quelled, the governor tells us about how now that the war against the Dredge is over, war amongst men and Varl are commonplace as people just want to fight. I'm glad that he has this exposition dump, but think that Ubin and his crew probably already know about this, as this isn't the first township that they've tithed. In either case, we take care of the remaining mutinous crew and meet royalty who happen to be docking in port before we all leave town together. Our next stop is Vetterfell, which has a cosmically humorous name in that it translates to bad weather. We stop for a moment before both the human and Varl heirs to the throne go missing, eventually find them fighting, or more accurately, Ludin, the human heir, fighting Dredge. The Varl heir lies dead in the snow, and we eventually learn that he was stabbed in the back. This turns out to be interesting, as it doesn't appear that the Dredge are known for their stealth. While going through this battle, let's talk about the Dredge for a moment. There are several different types, with most of them using stone armor and weapons. The small ones are known as grunts, and like to whack things with their hammers. They're not terribly strong, but if you ignore them, they can begin to whittle down resources for the bigger guys to really do damage. The other Dredge we meet in this encounter is the Brute. The Brutes are large creatures, about the size of a Varl, and wield large swords that when spun quickly act like a tuning fork and call other Dredge to the fight. They'll also typically be the most devastating enemies with their high strength. After taking down the Dredge, the pecking order needs to be re-established. Ludin wants to have some agency, but since he's small, Haken the Varl takes charge, as he's now the next in line to be the heir. Bureaucracy is boring though, so we change our focus to the opposite side of the map. Rook and Alette, a father and daughter, are just out of town and are hunting before they come across a large Dredge who stole their prey. The Dredge may actually be sneakier than I expected. It's only one though, so even though it's a brute, the duo take it down quickly and manage to collect some of their supplies before more Dredge appear, and the two end up leading them back to their hamlet of Skagr. A lone Varl is teaching a group of humans how to fight, and they'll get to immediately put their practice into action. We meet a new enemy, the Stone Guard. These Dredge have large shields and thus take less damage from attacks initially. They also will drive their shields into the ground, causing nearby units to fly backwards. The initial push by the Dredge is thwarted, but a Colossus sneaks up behind Alette, and although we yell to Alette to get away, she looks at us dumbfounded. One of the townsmen who helped us in the fight, Egil, rushes in to save her, but is no match for a stone mace. This proves to be a costly reminder that lives are at stake here. We talk with the chieftain about what to do next. In a meta sense, he's the only one at this conversation that doesn't have an actual name, which doesn't bode well for him. We decide to create a diversion to try to help him and the villagers survive, but being nameless in these times is a death sentence. The diversion is a success, but the chieftain falls nonetheless, and we make our way west, crossing small towns and stones devoted to old gods. In one of the towns, there's a domestic dispute where we somehow get involved, causing our hands to be stained with human blood. We also somehow became the new chieftain because we've been calling the shots since we left home. Surprisingly, people want to follow us. It could be out of fear though that we're just a band of murder hobos. On these long caravan treks, events will occur where we need to make decisions that will ultimately affect our strength, our supplies, and our morale. The general decision making was to save as many people as we could, so long as the supplies were high enough, but also to allow people to leave when they felt that they needed to. Safety in numbers, but I'm not forcing anyone to stay. Hopefully the walled city can provide some safety, but things aren't looking great, as there are refugees scattered outside the town, and word on the street is no one's allowed inside. We eventually make our way inside by talking to the person in charge of bringing food out to the refugees. If we want to stay inside though, we need to fight for Ekel to take back the town from warring groups vying for power. We end up taking his side as we don't really have a choice. Most of the politics in Vetterfell has been resolved at this point, so we swap back to that caravan. During this portion of our travels, we'll come across warbands of dredge. Their numbers will vary in size and their difficulty will be amplified based on how formations are set. We can also choose to chase after the remaining dredge after the initial skirmish ends to better situate our future. Inversely to the difficulty, the number of casualties accrued will be adjusted based on our formation. Winning harder fights means we save more of our caravan, whereas winning easy fights can lead to more deaths. The dredge become more and more common as we move closer to the capital, and unfortunately we can't be perfect in our fights. Eventually fighters in our brigade fall in combat, but the way that the game is set up, they're just wounded for a few days where the character's strength is reduced until recovered. In addition to coming across warbands, the caravan will also come across everyday life struggles. Occasionally we'll have to figure out why some of our crew is getting sick or how to interact with other caravans, or even debate if we should go after treasure that's fallen down a cliff. Hakon's caravan eventually makes its way to the city of Ridgehorn. There's signs that a battle took place not too long ago. The calmness doesn't last long though, as there's wave after wave of dredge that onslaught the city. Among these dredge, a new archetype approaches us in the Slinger. The Slingers are the first and only ranged dredge opponents that attack us with slings, but can also throw mines that explode on their next turn. If their turn doesn't come up again, the mines will never detonate. They'll also run away when attacked, so they can be a little frustrating to take down. After a couple of battles, we come across two people, one of which seems to be dead while the other is barely alive and is identified as a Mender. Menders weave spells to attack enemies and, as their name suggests, mend things like clothes as they recover an ally's armor, not their strength. The caravan makes their way to Grofheim to rally with other Varl, but when we crest the hill, we see a city in ruin. We'll need some time to process everything, so we'll swap back to Rook in the meantime. We're immediately thrown into a fight where we learn that Alette doesn't like to kill humans, so we'll do our best to not bring her along to human fights in the future. After the battle, we steal some food and make our way to Wormtoe. Ekel doesn't really like that, though, and chases us down, but says that he's basically dead anyway, so he'll become our prisoner. But we recruit him instead, saying that if he tries anything funny, we'll kill him ourselves. We also have Oddleaf train women to use bows, as we really need fighters, with the dredge being more common. Eventually we do arrive at the town of Wormtoe and meet a Varl named Krumer. He's one of the oldest Varl, slightly younger than Ubin, but likes to fight more. He tells us that Ivar changed his name from Yngvar, but doesn't want to gossip to tell us why everyone respects Ivar so much. Krumer also talks to us about strategy. Some of it's good, like keeping weak enemies alive to kill them all at once, but also tells us about the brutes summoning allies, which we fought a dozen times at this point. We leave Wormtoad to meet the Varl King, but our caravan is getting large, and morale is at an all-time low. It's going to be a long journey. We'll need to rest to improve morale, but don't have much supplies left, so any day wasted resting could cause the caravan to go hungry. We then meet with Fesholt on the roads. He was with the other caravan and tells us that Grofheim is overtaken and that the Varl are rallying at Einerntoft, so we change plans and head there instead. I just hope we have enough food. As we discuss plans, a large serpent appears off in the distance and sunders a mountain in two, then leaves without explanation. In its wake, a horde of dredge are led by a huge individual in armor the color of blood. We need to hurry. After a couple of days, we make it past the bridge at Einerntoft. We meet with the Varl King, who tells us that the blood-red dredge is named Belor and is a sunder, or a group of dredge that are incredibly powerful. We also learn of an enemy type known as the Stone Singer. Stone Singers use 2 spears and terrify all of our allies. We're told that they're similar to Menders. Mechanically, they cause a bleed debuff that deals 1 point of strength damage per turn. They're not terribly difficult, but will rack up damage if left alone too long. Belor makes their entrance and Ivor decides to 1v1, but Belor's special ability is to Scream, which deals 1 armor and 1 strength damage. Ivor has no chance and Belor cuts Ivor's shield arm off. The serpent then reappears and decides to watch the conflict, distracting the dredge. We use the chaos to pull Ivor to safety and regroup. While Ivor's on the mend, we learn a couple of things. The first thing that we learn is that the second mender that we abandoned a few days ago is actually alive, and we need to find her at Sigerholm. The second thing that we learn is that Ivor is famous because he managed to kill a Sunder in the previous war. Ivor recovers and we defend the bridge as long as possible, but try to parlay with the king to destroy it and stop Belor. He's hesitant to destroy the bridge, however, as once the Varl die, there won't be any evidence of them living. The bridge will be a reminder of their existence. We do eventually convince him to destroy the bridge, but learn later that Belor feinted an attack on the bridge and circled around in an attempt to ambush us. Belor relentlessly pursues us now though, and so Ubin says we should team up, and so the 2 caravans finally merge. Just in time too, as dredge still swarm the roadways. We make our way to a godstone, and at the base lie dead dredge, but interestingly, near a slinger lies a dredge baby. Ivor drops a bombshell on us that the dredge aren't here for war, they're here to flee. He also says that the Sunder that he killed was nursing at the time. He killed its child, and the mother didn't put up a fight when he took the Sunder's life. He refused to become the next heir as it was a dishonorable kill. Avon the Mender also tells us that when he spoke with Juno, the second Mender, who isn't actually dead, she told him that a darkness was encroaching the lands, which is likely why the dredge are fleeing. I don't know why they're trying to kill us though in the meantime. In any case, the baby dredge is innocent, and so we take it along despite hearing grumbles throughout the caravan. We make our way to Sigerholm. The town is sinking into the lake after the earthquake. Juno isn't here, and the locals eye our caravan. We decide to wait a couple of days, but the locals steal our supplies and a fight breaks out. Staying here is either going to run us out of supplies or get lots of innocent people killed. We can't afford either, and so we press on with 2 weeks worth of food. After a week of travel, Onef talks to us in private about how he doesn't think everyone's loyal to us. He goes through the list of people he doesn't trust before stabbing us with a knife. His traitorous crew kills several in our caravan before we manage to take out most of Onef's followers. The conflict ends with Alette shooting Onef in the head. We find out that he was really in charge at Frostfeller and was likely planning this from the beginning. Whether or not he was though, we take stock of our situation and have a hard conversation on if we should be letting more people join the caravan. We decide to still let people join our ranks when we come across them though. We want to see the good in people in these dark times. We eventually get to the walled city of Borsgard, which is currently being sieged by dredge. The Sunder are all making their way to the human capital of Arborang, with Belor making their way through Borsgard. We'll be able to hold out for a few days once it arrives, but we'll need a game plan. We decide to build boats using the rubble from abandoned buildings, but it's going to take some time. After a week of defending the city, we hear a horn. Hakon and his crew have made their way to the city with Juno in tow. Juno and Rook leave the city to collect silver from a godstone, and it turns out that Juno can influence the minds of nearly anyone, but needs some extra oomph for Belor. The plan is that we're going to use the silver to create an arrowhead and shoot Belor with it. Juno will convince Belor that they're dying, which will cause Belor to go unconscious for a bit. With Belor unconscious, the remaining dredge will flee and give time for the rest of the city to build boats. After collecting the silver, we talk with Alette to decide who's going to shoot Belor, eventually concluding that Alette is a better shot, so she should hold the arrow. Juno then takes us to confront Belor. We weaken his armor so that Alette can fire the arrow. As their namesake suggests, Belor screeches when hit with the arrow and charges towards Alette, crushing her. During the final battle, Belor has one final tactic up their sleeve. Whenever attacked, Belor will retaliate. Belor wounds several of our party before ultimately falling. Try as the Menders might, they cannot save Alette. Having her shoot Belor was her downfall, and Rook is faced with the worst fate a father can endure. Maybe we should have been the one that shot Belor. Maybe it could have been us instead of her. I knew this was a choices mattered game, but I never thought that the choices of life and death would be something that I had to decide. She was close to Belor though, maybe it wouldn't have mattered? Hakon was near her, he would have stopped Belor if he could, right? No, these thoughts won't bring her back, and we all knew the risks. We honor Alette with a Viking's burial, before the screen fades to black. The Banner Saga was an interesting game, which I enjoyed. The combat was unique for me, in that the amount of damage you dealt was proportional to the amount of health that you had. It made you think about when to attack their armor for future damage versus attacking their strength now so that enemies would deal less damage to you in turn. The alternating ally-enemy turns was also interesting, as it meant that even if a party was small, it could be just as lethal as their turns would come up more frequently compared to a single specific enemy. The story was also decent, although I suppose things start to make more sense as loose ends are tied in the future chapters. Similarly, I think that some of the information provided in this video may become outdated in future chapters as the saga continues. Where the game really shines in my eyes is the choices that we must make along the way. Some of these choices were lighthearted and probably didn't impact the story too much, like allowing the caravan to collect scales at a godstone. Other choices can lead to the death of characters, such as Egil or Alette in our case. As mentioned before, I tried to keep supplies of our caravan higher than 0 so that we wouldn't starve. It was a bit upsetting where in a couple of scenarios I had to refuse villagers from entering because I was low on supplies, and I was scared that even one day less could cause starvation. Because of this, I think that the world of the Banner Saga is incredibly dangerous. Early on, we learned that people are fighting each other for power once the war ended, and so life in the city could be dangerous, let alone trying to survive off the land in a smaller village. Once the dredge began their exodus from the north, the dangers ramped up, as even though they fled, there wasn't an attempt for peace, and so countless everyday people died at the hands of the dredge. During our travels, some of the hordes reached hundreds, if not thousands of dredge. As supplies are scarce, people become more desperate to survive. We saw several groups asking for supplies, some politely, others not so much. We even saw a mutiny in a city, as well as in our own caravan. There really isn't anywhere to safely live out your days here, with no end in sight. All of this, and I haven't even talked about the serpent talking to Juno, about how it was upset that it's supposed to be the cause of the end of the world, but some unknown darkness is trying to steal its thunder. Is there really no hope for surviving in this world? As an outsider, at least we know that there are 2 more stories in this saga, but don't know what lies at the end. Sometimes we need to just keep moving. We as people have some sense of self-preservation, and I for one believe that the good will outweigh the bad, and that in trying times we can share our eggs, and that we'll help each other get through the hardships. Thank you all so much for watching this episode on how dangerous the world can be in the Banner Saga. Be sure to leave a comment on what other lands we can discover. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you in the next one.